What's going on, everybody? It's Warren. Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder, and oh my gosh, what an ending for Loki. Episode 6, the finale of Season 1, was absolutely insane. And of course, before we go any further, I will be talking about spoilers in this video, so you've been warned. After all, it is a finale explained video and breakdown. And after all that we've been through since the very first episode of Loki, we were right about Kang. Kang was the villain of Loki and is now the big bad of the entire Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. Man, that feels good to say. It has officially begun. We thought it started in WandaVision, but now it is 100% happening. We are in the multiverse. Now, there is a ton to break down of Loki episode 6, the finale of season 1, and I'm probably going to be doing many episodes over the next few weeks, but in this video, I'm going to be talking about every single thing that you need to know about what happened in the finale, who exactly Nathaniel Richards, aka Kang the Conqueror, aka He Who Remains, aka Immortus. I had the theory about Immortus that I stuck to, and it came true. That's the direction they went, and I'll explain everything that you need to know in this video. And I'll talk about the next Avengers Endgame level event, how this sets it up, and how this also sets up Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. If you love Marvel and want to stay up to date on everything in the MCU, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest videos. And if you're new, welcome, and also thank you to this awesome community. Everybody who joined for the live stream last night or at any point in time, you're all awesome. So let's first start off by talking about who the main villain, Jonathan Majors, is. At Disney's Investor Day, Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios, came out and confirmed that Jonathan Majors would be playing Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Kang's actual name is Nathaniel Richards. He actually has many different names throughout many different points in time. Rama-Tut when he ruled Egypt, Kang the Conqueror when he was conquering, Immortus, and Jerk as he mentions to Loki and Sylvie. And it's important to know who exactly Nathaniel Richards is to understand the ending of the Loki season finale. Now, He Who Remains actually explains his origin story. He says that a variant of himself in the 31st century lived on Earth and discovered that there were other universes stacked on top of his. Other versions of himself discovered the same thing in their own universes, and naturally they made contact with each other. For a while it was good, and they actually helped each other, giving each other their own technology, helping other universes advance. However, he explains that not every version of himself was so pure of heart. And he says, to some of us, new worlds only meant one thing: new lands to be conquered. And this is obviously referring to other variants of him that go by Kang the Conqueror. Of course, this resulted in an all-out multiversal war between each timeline, between each universe, between each variant. And this war continued to cause tears in the multiverse, which in turn created a being that existed outside of space and time, and that being was Alioth, the huge cloud creature that we saw in Loki episode 5, the one that Loki and Sylvie enchanted. With the help of Alioth, our Nathaniel Richards defeated all of the others. He then took the timeline that the MCU currently exists in and made it the only timeline, the sacred timeline. And he became the one who remains, He Who Remains, the only remaining Nathaniel Richards. And he was afraid of himself. He was afraid of other variants of him emerging and coming back and starting another multiversal war. So he created the TVA to stop other branch timelines from happening, to prevent a huge multiversal war from breaking out again, nearly destroying everything. So in a way, our Nathaniel Richards isn't actually a true villain. Yes, he did some horrible and terrible things to create the TVA and keep the sacred timeline the only main timeline, but by him doing this is how he prevented essentially the entire multiverse from ending. And so we're left with a variant of Nathaniel Richards being the creator of the TVA. Now, our Nathaniel Richards isn't exactly Kang the Conqueror, although he has said that he's been called a conqueror. However, he could be referring to a variant of himself, one of those variants that thought to conquer other spaces and universes instead of being peaceful. But the Nathaniel Richards that we saw in episode 6 is most likely Immortus. Immortus was once Kang the Conqueror. However, in this story, the Timekeepers were indeed real, unlike in the MCU where Kang explains that the timekeepers aren't real, it was all him. He simply made them up and used them to create the illusion of a bureaucracy. But in his story in the comics, the timekeepers were the last beings in all of existence. Everybody else had died, so they went back in time and they found Kang the Conqueror and made a deal with him. They said that instead of conquering timelines, if he would protect them, they would grant him immortality. And Kang agreed, and he became immortal, and he dubbed himself no longer Kang, but Immortus. And that is essentially what we saw here, a Kang who was actually trying to preserve the multiverse. A Kang that was trying to prevent other variants of himself from starting a multiversal war. And also a Kang that said reincarnation, and he also said that he would just wind back up in the same place. And right before he died, his final words were, "I'll see you soon," and then he winked at Sylvie. Now, there are two ways to interpret this. One is that he was simply referring to his variants. They are him, so when he said, "I'll see you soon," he could have simply meant a variant of me will see you soon. And that could very easily be the case, but let's look a little bit deeper into what he said. Throughout his conversation with Loki and Sylvie, he specifically said another multiversal war will start if he dies, and he will just end right back up here anyways, and then he chuckled. He then would go on to say, "Reincarnation, baby." And then after Kang said they crossed the threshold, meaning the threshold of the end of time, what this basically meant was new time was being written. It wasn't at a standstill anymore, and Kang no longer knew what was going to happen. More on this in a bit, but when he said we crossed the threshold, he then would go on to say, "It feels like a fresh start." And perhaps this was actually Kang's plan all along. Remember, he is the one that gave Loki and Sylvie the two options. Take his place and rule the TVA, or kill him and essentially cause the multiverse of madness and infinite Kangs would appear. Now here's where we dive deeper into what he said to Loki and Sylvie. Loki asked why would he give up control over the TVA, over the sacred timeline. And he essentially said, he's tired, and he's older than he looks. We have no idea how old he is, but Kang is the master of time travel. It's probably safe to assume that he's lived for thousands and thousands of years. And as he claimed, this game is for the young and hungry. And that may be true, but what if there was a way for him to return younger? What if he was speaking literally when he talked about reincarnation and ending up back in the same place? He does say that he's been called a conqueror. Perhaps he was actually one of those conquerors. After all, Kang was a conqueror before becoming Immortus. It could be the same here. But if he was speaking literally about reincarnation, he could come back, and he could be younger, and he could be hungry again, and truly become Kang the Conqueror, the next big bad of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. The master of time travel, and seemingly as we have right now, the master of the multiverse. And these are our two options. It could simply be just another variant of Kang coming, or it could literally be him. Somehow he could reincarnate himself and come back, but that's something that we're probably going to deal with in Loki episode 2, or in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, or Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Because one thing is for sure, a lot of Kangs are coming. And now that you know who Nathaniel Richards is, we can talk about the ending of Loki episode 6, the season finale, and talk about how Kang is coming as the big bad. Now, as He Who Remains explained, or as Nathaniel explained, if they killed him, essentially the multiverse would go into madness. Branch timelines would be created, and from those other timelines that were created, other versions of himself would want to conquer the multiverse, and this would result in a multiversal war. Loki believed Kang, but Sylvie didn't. Or perhaps a part of her did believe. But revenge on who created the TVA got the best of her. That was her mission ever since she was a little girl. She worked her whole entire life to get to this moment, and she wasn't going to stop. She was going to take down the person in charge of the TVA. Unfortunately, He Who Remains was not lying. Sylvie sent Loki back to the TVA after a good little kiss, something that I think everybody really wanted to happen, whether you admit that or not. And then after she stabbed Loki in the back, she stabbed Kang in the stomach and killed him. And right when she did that, the multiverse went into madness. We saw the literal timeline outside of the castle start to branch off into different timelines. And not only did the sacred timeline start to have branch timelines, but branch timelines came out of other branch timelines. This truly is madness. And like Nathaniel said, there are infinite amounts of variants of him that are going to be coming, and as we saw, one of them seems to have already prevailed. We go back to Loki at the TVA. He is absolutely heartbroken and crushed from what Sylvie did. She betrayed him, and she sent the multiverse into madness. But our Loki has changed. He's loved, and he actually has come to love his friends as well, and the universe. He immediately rushes to find Mobius. He finds him and immediately expresses how terrified he is of Nathaniel coming. Mobius says, at this point, how are we gonna stop it? And Loki yells, we can't. Well, he actually yells, we can't, but his accent is a lot better than me saying it. Loki says we made a terrible mistake. He's terrifying. He's planned everything. He's seen everything. He knows everything. But somebody is coming. Countless different versions of a very dangerous person. And they're all set on war. We need to prepare. And here's where things start to get really interesting and confusing. Mobius, who was best friends with Loki in the last episode, and even fought for him in this episode, seemingly no longer knows who Loki is. He thinks he's an analyst, and he asks him what division he's from, and then he asks him who he is and what his name is. And then Hunter B-15 calls in backup. She says boots on the ground now, archives where they are. So she doesn't know him either, and just as she calls in backup, Loki immediately notices a new big statue of He Who Remains. Although this person is most likely Kang the Conqueror, and he has conquered the TVA. And here is where we actually kind of see the difference between He Who Remains and Kang the Conqueror. He Who Remains seemed to actually be trying to save the universe, prevent multiversal war. He made up the timekeepers, and he tried to keep it pretty simple for the sake of protecting the sacred timeline. However, this Kang that we now have a statue for is not so subtle. There are no timekeeper statues. There is no lie about timekeepers creating the TVA in the sacred timeline. This Kang straight up took over the TVA and made himself the god over them. Even B-15, when talking to Mobius, actually references him. She says, does he want us to just let them all branch? He is Kang, the person in charge of the TVA. And this is why Mobius and Hunter B-15 actually don't remember Loki. As I'm sure you recall, in the original TVA that we've known this entire time, all of the workers are variants, although they did not know that. They thought that they were created by the timekeepers specifically to work at the TVA, but they were real people before with real lives. But the TVA wiped their memories and made them believe what they wanted them to believe. This is the same exact thing happening. This specific King has conquered the TVA, become their leader, and wiped everybody's memories and made them believe what he wants them to believe. This is why they have absolutely no knowledge of who Loki is. They have essentially reverted back to their old state of being brainwashed TVA agents who know nothing else besides their life at the TVA, although this life is them working for Kang. Now, this Kang seems to be the next big bad that we're going to see in the MCU. He controls the TVA, which essentially means he controls all of the branch timelines. Now, whether or not he chooses to wrap those up and cut them off is entirely up in the air right now. Mobius states that there were 63 new branches in one unit alone created, and who knows how many units have been created. And judging by the monitor that we saw in the TVA, I counted at least 15 units that were created. That is a ton of new branches. And Hunter B-15 states, does he want us to just let them all branch? And the way that she asked this implies that, yes, he does. And what is his plan? Right now, we're unsure. It's going to unravel all throughout Phase 4, but one thing is for sure. This is going to be a villain unlike any that we've seen before. A master of time, and one that has a bunch of different evil variants of himself. The new team of heroes definitely have their work cut out for them. And speaking of the Avengers and new heroes having their work cut out for them, this is all going to lead to the next Avengers Endgame level event. Actually bigger than an Avengers Endgame level event. This is all leading to Secret Wars. In the Secret Wars Battle World storyline, a bunch of different universes run into each other. It's kind of what, like Nathaniel explained, happened. A huge multiversal war. All these universes collide into one place. From there, all of the heroes fight all of the bad guys, and there are multiple different variants of multiple different heroes. Multiple variants of Iron Man, multiple variants of Thor, Spider-Man, you get the picture. And this is what is going to happen in the MCU. Unfortunately, it's not going to be happening anytime soon. I say we're probably 7 to 8 years away from it happening. Huge events like Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame don't just happen every few years or so, unfortunately. But when Secret Wars finally does come out, we're going to be seeing multiple versions of the Avengers, multiple versions of the X-Men, the Fantastic Four. All of the heroes that we love are going to have variants, and all of these variants are going to come together to fight the evil variants. This also opens it up for people like Robert Downey Jr. and Black Widow to return. Chris Evans can return as Steve Rogers because it will be a different version. X-Men from the Fox universe could return as well because this won't undo what has happened in the past because they are simply variants from another universe. It's going to be absolutely insane, and this is exactly what Loki just set up. And speaking of people who have their work cut out for them, Doctor Strange and Spider-Man are two of those people. Now, keep in mind that the writer for the Loki series, Michael Waldron, also wrote Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. That is not coincidental. And as this finale came out, we got reports that Loki is actually going to end up in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Again, not a coincidence. We just witnessed the madness. This is what the Multiverse of Madness is referring to, what Loki and Sylvie just did by killing He Who Remains. Doctor Strange is one of the most powerful beings in the universe, and he is actually aware of other universes, other realities. This is kind of his specialty. However, there is one very important key to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and fixing the multiverse, and that is Wanda. In WandaVision, they hinted at Wanda being a Nexus being in those commercials where they talked about the Nexus pill. Then in Loki, they talked about Nexus events. Now in the comics, Nexus beings are extremely important. They're entities that have the ability to affect probability and the future and alter the flow of the universal time stream. They are the keystones of the multiverse and are extremely important to the multiverse's stability. This is why Wanda is going to be in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. That and, she has the Darkhold and is using extremely powerful sorcery and witchcraft. But Wanda and Doctor Strange are going to be two of the main key people that are going to help restore the multiverse and make sure that there isn't a multiversal war again. But there is going to be one. That's going to be Secret Wars. But that is what Loki has set up for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and that's what we're going to be seeing. But before that, we're going to get our fair share of madness in Spider-Man No Way Home. Now we know it's going to be a multiversal film, specifically the Spider-Verse, and if you have much doubt left after that season finale of Loki, then I don't really know what to tell you. I get it, you don't believe it until there's proof, but keep in mind Doctor Strange is in Spider-Man No Way Home, and Alfred Molina and Jamie Foxx are confirmed to be in the film as well, both from different universes. So Spider-Man No Way Home is going to be the first film that we actually see repercussions of what just happened in the Loki finale. Loki and Sylvie killing He Who Remains / Nathaniel Richards created the multiverse. Now other variants of everybody exist, and they're going to continue to exist. There is no longer a TVA focused on killing these branch timelines and variants. This is how two things happen in Spider-Man No Way Home. The first thing, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire show up as variants of Spider-Man. Everything in their movies actually happened. They were simply in other universes, and they are variants of Spider-Man, Peter Parker. As Loki explained, variants can be very similar to one another, or they can be extremely different. Like one could be Tom Hiddleston and the other could be an alligator. So this is going to bring Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man on screen with our Tom Holland Spider-Man. The second thing it's going to do is bring all of these other villains from different universes into our universe. And essentially the multiversal war will begin in Spider-Man No Way Home. The branches are going to start to go into other branches, and variants from one branch will cross over into others. From there on out enters the Sinister Six in our main timeline. Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, Jamie Foxx's Electro, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, and others that are rumored to pop up as well. So as you can see, the finale of Loki Season 1 has huge repercussions going forward in the MCU. From here on out, the MCU is never going to be the same. We are now officially out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and into the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. And anything is possible now. Now, as I mentioned, this is just one breakdown of the many breakdowns that I'll be doing over the next few weeks about the Loki finale and what it means for the future of the MCU. I hope this breakdown helped you learn a little bit more about what happened in that season finale, and let me know what you think about the season finale in the comments down below. What would you rate this 1 out of 10? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the latest Marvel news. Don't forget to like the video. And again, huge thank you to you all. This community is awesome. Thanks for everybody stopping by my live stream. You all make this absolutely incredible, and I love you all. If you want to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, my links are in the description. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.